Personal presence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build through daily choices, often without realizing it. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That simple Stoic truth reveals the secret behind how ordinary people develop extraordinary presence. Today we'll explore how small, deliberate habits rooted in Stoic philosophy can quietly reshape how you move through the world. These 20 subtle practices work like compound interest for your character. Individually, they seem minor, but over time they create an undeniable shift in how others perceive you, and more importantly, how you perceive yourself. No grand gestures are required, just consistent attention to the way you meet each moment. Ever found yourself firing off a text in anger or snapping at someone, only to wish you could take it back moments later? That instant reaction, the one that feels urgent in the moment, is exactly what the Stoics trained themselves to resist. Epictetus put it plainly, no one has power over you unless you give it to them through your own choices. The difference between reacting and responding lies in that critical pause, the breath between what happens and what you do about it. Think of it as a mental buffer zone where you reclaim control. In meetings or tense conversations, this habit alone can transform misunderstandings into clarity. When your coworker makes a dismissive comment or your partner says something frustrating, that deliberate pause keeps you from becoming an emotional puppet. Try this. Next time you feel provoked, count to 3 silently. That tiny window lets reason catch up to emotion. When was the last time your gut reaction actually served you better than a measured reply? Seneca once wrote, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." Those words capture the essence of morning intentionality, a practice that turns ordinary days into deliberate ones. The Stoics didn't just wake up and stumble into their routines. They designed their first moments with purpose, knowing those early choices set the tone for everything that followed. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This habit isn't about rigid productivity or cramming more tasks into your day. It's about grounding yourself in what truly matters before the world's demands pull you in a dozen directions. Imagine 2 versions of your morning, one where you reach for your phone the second you wake up, absorbing notifications, news, and other people's agendas before you've even had a thought of your own. The other begins with a few quiet moments, maybe writing down one value you want to embody today or visualizing how you'll handle potential challenges with calm clarity. Which version leaves you feeling centered? The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need anything elaborate, just a minute or 2 to ask yourself, what kind of person do I choose to be today? That small pause shifts you from reactive to intentional. Tomorrow, before you check your phone or rush into the day, try this instead. Take 3 deep breaths and name one thing within your control, your effort, your attitude, your focus. That's how you build a morning that doesn't just happen to you, but one you consciously create. Here's the next section of your script following your guidelines. Why do we instinctively avoid discomfort when it's often the very thing that makes us stronger? The Stoics didn't just tolerate hardship, they actively sought it out, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood something profound. Voluntary discomfort trains you to handle involuntary challenges with unshakable calm. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who called luxury the enemy of vigor, put it bluntly, how can someone accustomed to warmth, soft beds, and rich meals possibly endure the inevitable hardships of life? This habit isn't about punishing yourself, it's about rewiring your relationship with adversity. Seneca captured it perfectly. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Imagine building mental calluses just as hands grow tougher from work. Small, deliberate acts of discomfort, like taking a cold shower, skipping an unnecessary meal, or waking up 30 minutes earlier, aren't tests of endurance. They're reminders that you're more capable than your cravings for ease suggest. Think of it like this: every time you choose the harder path when the easier one is available, you're depositing resilience into your psychological bank account. When life inevitably withdraws from that account through stress, setbacks, or unexpected demands, you'll have the emotional reserves to meet it without crumbling. So here's a challenge. Pick one comfort you rely on daily, maybe scrolling social media when bored, or always choosing the most convenient option, and intentionally disrupt it this week. Not to prove anything, but to rediscover what you're truly made of. Because the person who can sit with discomfort, they're the one who owns the room without saying a word. Ever notice how problems that loomed large last year now seem almost laughable? The Stoics had a name for that shift in perspective. They called it the view from above, and it was their secret weapon against life's petty frustrations. Marcus Aurelius would stare at the stars and remind himself, think of the substance of the whole, how small your share. Think of the expanse of time, how brief and fleeting your moment in it. This practice isn't about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them in their true proportion. Picture standing on a mountain, looking down at a city below. The argument you had earlier, the spilled coffee, the missed appointment from that height, they're invisible. That's the power of cosmic perspective. It turns molehills back into molehills. Try applying this the next time you're stuck in traffic or tangled in office drama. Instead of simmering in frustration, zoom out, that line of cars. A tiny thread in the vast tapestry of human movement. That snippy email, a blip in the centuries-long story of human communication. The more you practice this mental zoom out, the quieter trivial annoyances become. Here's an experiment. Pick one stressor gnawing at you today. Now imagine floating high above the earth, seeing continents, oceans, the curve of the planet. From there, does that problem still feel like an emergency? Odds are you'll find space to breathe, and that's exactly where clarity begins. The Stoics weren't asking you to stop caring, they were teaching you to care wisely. Because when you see your life as both infinitely small and profoundly precious, that's when real presence emerges, not from puffing yourself up, but from understanding your place in something greater. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius never intended for his private writings to be read by millions, yet here we are, 2,000 years later, finding wisdom in his personal reflections. His journal, later published as Meditations, wasn't filled with grand pronouncements or poetic flourishes. Instead, it captured something far more powerful, the raw, honest practice of examining his own thoughts. Seneca described this nightly ritual as taking stock of your soul, a way to untangle the knots of emotion and see reality with clearer eyes. Stoic journaling isn't about recording every detail of your day. It's about separating fleeting impressions from deliberate judgments. Imagine catching your reflection in a muddy pond. The water ripples, distorting the image. Writing acts like letting the water still, revealing what's truly there. When frustration clouds your mind after a difficult conversation, putting pen to paper forces you to ask, was that person truly unfair, or am I interpreting their words through my own biases? For a modern twist, consider this contrast. Scrolling through social media bombards you with others' curated highlight reels, leaving your own thoughts fragmented and reactive. Journaling does the opposite. It creates space to process your experiences without comparison or noise. Seneca put it best: the unexamined life isn't worth living, but the over-scrolled life leaves no room to live at all. Want to try it tonight? Here's a simple prompt. What challenged me today, and how did I meet it? No need for eloquence, just honesty. Like Marcus, you might find that the act of writing reveals truths quieter distractions drown out. Because presence isn't just how you show up to others, it starts with how honestly you show up to yourself. There's a strange comfort in naming our fears out loud, not to dwell on them but to disarm their power. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the practice of visualizing life's potential hardships before they happen. Far from pessimism, it's like carrying an umbrella not because you're convinced it will rain, but because you're ready if it does. Seneca, who faced exile and financial ruin, wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Picture this: you're sitting at your desk when an email notification pops up. Your position at work is being eliminated. Your stomach drops. Now here's the twist: that mental rehearsal just gave you an edge. By imagining the scenario beforehand, you've already traced paths through it, maybe updating your resume periodically or cultivating side skills. The actual blow, if it comes, lands softer because you've practiced catching it. This habit isn't about catastrophizing, it's about clarity. Ancient Stoics would visualize losing status, health, even loved ones, not to suffer twice, but to recognize that joy and loss are two sides of the same coin. When you mentally lose your home for a moment, you walk back into it with fresh eyes, noticing the warmth of the lights or the comfort of your chair. Gratitude grows in that space between taking things for granted and remembering they could vanish. Try it today. Pick one thing you rely on: your phone, your morning coffee, a person you love, and pause to imagine life without it. Not to spiral into worry, but to uncover the quiet gifts hidden in plain sight. Because resilience isn't about avoiding storms, it's about building an anchor so sturdy that when winds howl, you sway but don't break. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, fortune falls heavily on those for whom she's unexpected. The prepared mind remains unshaken. Most of us move through our days convinced we're seeing reality clearly. But what if our first impressions are like funhouse mirrors, distorting what's actually there? Epictetus revealed this blind spot centuries ago with his ladder of ascent, a simple mental model for how thoughts become beliefs. Here's how it works: an event happens, your mind serves up an instant interpretation. And here's the critical fork in the road: you either grab that thought without question or pause to ask, is this actually true? Picture scrolling through your phone and seeing a coworker's vague post that feels like a jab at you. Your jaw tightens. That's the first rung of the ladder, the raw impression. But the Stoic move happens next, stepping back to interrogate that reaction before climbing higher into full-blown resentment. Epictetus put it bluntly: it's not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them. This discipline shines in modern misunderstandings, like when a terse email from your boss sends you spiraling. Instead of mentally drafting your resignation, practice withholding assent. Ask, could there be another explanation? Maybe they're rushed, or this isn't about me at all. That space between stimulus and response is where emotional freedom lies. Try this today. Pick one situation where your gut screams an immediate judgment: a stranger's rude glance, a friend's cancelled plan. Before cementing that story in your mind, insert a question mark. They're mad at me becomes they might be mad at me, or maybe they're just tired. Notice how the weight lifts when you stop mistaking assumptions for facts. Because presence isn't about reacting to illusions, it's about seeing what's really there. Imagine standing in the bustling streets of ancient Athens, where philosophers measured wisdom not by how much they said, but by how little. Zeno, founder of Stoicism, taught that speech was like gold, valuable precisely because it was rare. Fast forward to today, where we drown in a sea of endless notifications, impulsive tweets, and half-formed thoughts spoken aloud. The Stoics would have recognized this as a modern tragedy. We've confused quantity of words with quality of thought. Musonius Rufus cut to the heart of it. If you can't improve upon silence, don't break it. That's the essence of speaking with purpose, a habit that transforms not just what you say, but how you're heard. Think about the last conversation where you felt truly listened to. Chances are the other person wasn't just waiting for their turn to talk. They gave you the rarest gift in our noisy world, undivided attention. Here's where Stoic frugality with words becomes practical power. In meetings, resist the reflex to fill every pause. Your silence makes your eventual words weightier. With friends, notice when you're rehearsing your response instead of absorbing theirs. Even in conflict, a single measured sentence lands harder than a torrent of reactions. The quieter you become, the more space others have to reveal their true intentions. Try this experiment today. Catch yourself the next time you feel that itch to interrupt or overshare. Pause. Ask, is what I'm about to say necessary? Is it kind? Does it improve upon silence? You'll start to notice how often we speak out of habit, not purpose. Because presence isn't just about being seen. It's about knowing when your voice adds value and when your silence speaks volumes. As Seneca warned, speech is the mirror of the soul. We become what we utter. Choose your words like a sculptor chiseling marble, removing everything that isn't essential. You're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, watching the clock tick closer to your appointment time. That tightness in your chest, it's not the traffic causing it, it's your resistance to the traffic. The Stoics had a radical antidote to this universal frustration. Amor fati, the love of fate. Nietzsche later seized this idea, calling it his formula for greatness. Not just enduring what life throws at you, but embracing it like you chose it yourself. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal one morning, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the secret hidden in plain sight. The traffic jam isn't robbing you of time. It's gifting you moments you'd never take otherwise. Maybe to listen to that podcast you've saved, to notice how sunlight filters through your windshield, or to practice the patience you claim to value. This habit shines brightest when plans crumble. Picture this: your flight gets cancelled after you've already cleared security. You could fume at the airline staff, or you could spot the unexpected luxury of a free afternoon in an unfamiliar city. The Stoics weren't naive. They knew thunderstorms would come. Their genius was in packing metaphorical umbrellas and dancing in the rain. Here's your challenge today. Pick one irritation. A long line, a noisy neighbor, a delayed package, and whisper amor fati to yourself. Not as resignation, but as recognition. This moment, exactly as it is where your power lies. Because presence isn't about controlling life's playlist, it's about finding the rhythm in whatever song comes on next. Every evening, screens glow in countless bedrooms as thumbs scroll endlessly. But 2,000 years ago, a different ritual unfolded by candlelight. Seneca would end his days with 3 piercing questions recorded in on anger. What bad habit did I cure today? What temptation did I resist? How am I better? Not exactly the same as binge watching 3 episodes before passing out, is it? This nightly ode, it wasn't about self-judgment, it was a calibration. Imagine tightening the strings of a violin before putting it away so it stays ready to play beautifully tomorrow. The Stoics knew something we often forget. Sleep isn't just a pause between days, it's the reset button for your character. Without reflection, we risk waking up as the same person who went to bed, carrying forward yesterday's unchecked reactions. Here's the modern dilemma: scrolling numbs the mind while reflection sharpens it. One leaves you passively absorbing other people's highlights, the other helps you process your growth. Picture 2 versions of your night, one ending with bleary-eyed Instagram reels, the other with Seneca's 3 questions scribbled in a notebook. Which version sends you into sleep with clarity instead of clutter? Tonight, try this experiment. Before reaching for your phone, steal 5 minutes to ask Seneca's trio. No need for lengthy journaling, just honesty. Where did I let frustration win today? When did I choose patience instead? Like a gardener pruning dead branches, you're making space for tomorrow's growth. Because presence isn't just how you show up in daylight, it's how consciously you close each chapter, ensuring the next one begins wiser. Few things reveal character faster than how a person stands when the world around them is crumbling. The Stoic Senator Cotto became legendary for his unshakable composure. Historians wrote that even during violent political riots, he walked through Rome's streets with the same measured pace, shoulders relaxed, chin level, as if carrying an invisible crown of dignity. His secret wasn't indifference, it was the profound understanding that physical poise isn't just about appearances, it's the outward expression of an inner citadel. Epictetus took this further, drilling his students on how philosophers ought to move. If you slump when you walk, you've already conceded defeat to circumstance. Modern science now confirms what the Stoics intuited: our posture doesn't just reflect our state of mind, it actively shapes it. Harvard's power posing studies revealed something remarkable. Holding expansive, upright postures for just 2 minutes triggers a 20% surge in confidence, boosting hormones while lowering stress chemicals. The body, it turns out, is a feedback loop to the soul. This habit isn't about vanity or rigid formality. It's about aligning your exterior with the virtues you cultivate internally. When you sit with your spine straight during a difficult conversation, you're not just projecting calm, you're reinforcing it within yourself. When you resist the urge to shuffle anxiously before a big presentation, you're not fooling anyone. You're reminding your nervous system who's in charge. Here's an experiment you can try this very moment. Notice how you're sitting or standing. Are your shoulders creeping toward your ears? Is your weight uneven? Adjust. Feel the subtle shift in your breath, your focus. That's the Stoic edge, the realization that discipline isn't just something you think. It's something you do, one upright posture at a time. Because presence isn't conjured from thin air, it's built through the 1,000 small acts of carrying yourself like the person you aspire to become. There's a question that cuts through all our excuses and procrastination like a hot knife through butter. What would you do differently if you knew this month was your last? Not in some far-off future, but 30 days from now. Before you dismiss this as morbid, consider how the Stoics turned this realization into their most powerful tool for intentional living. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do, say, and think." That's the essence of Memento Mori, not a morbid fixation, but a wake-up call to what truly matters. Ancient philosophers kept skulls on their desks. Roman generals had slaves whisper, "Remember you must die," during victory parades. These weren't dark rituals, they were grounding mechanisms. When you hold the fragility of life in one hand, trivial distractions slip through your fingers like sand. Think of how urgency sharpens your focus when a deadline looms. Now imagine applying that clarity to your relationships, your passions, the legacy you're building. Here's how this works in practice. When torn between scrolling social media or calling an aging parent, Memento Mori makes the choice obvious. When debating whether to launch that project or stay in your comfort zone, it silences the someday lie. Even modern psychology confirms this. Studies show people who reflect on mortality regularly make bolder, more authentic life choices. Try this tonight. Write 2 lists. First, jot down how you'd spend a hypothetical last month, the people you'd seek, the experiences you'd prioritize, the unfinished business you'd resolve. Then make a second list. What's stopping you from doing those things now? The gap between those pages isn't just ink, it's the map to your unlived life. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, life is long if you know how to use it. Death isn't the enemy of presence, it's the compass that points you toward it. In a world where success is measured by how much we accumulate, The ancient Stoics dared to ask a revolutionary question. What if real freedom comes not from adding but from subtracting? Diogenes lived this philosophy to its extreme when Alexander the Great asked what he could do for the famous philosopher. The man who owned nothing but a wooden cup replied, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." That moment captures the essence of Stoic simplicity, recognizing how little we truly need to be unshackled from dependence. Seneca, despite his wealth, warned constantly against its weight. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Imagine that insight translated to today's cluttered lives: our overflowing closets, jam-packed calendars, and digital devices buzzing with endless demands. Every unnecessary possession, every trivial commitment, is a tiny chain we've voluntarily clamped around our own ankles. This habit isn't about deprivation for its own sake. It's about creating space physically and mentally for what genuinely matters. Try a modern twist on Diogenes' challenge. Open your phone's app drawer. How many icons do you actually use weekly? Those forgotten apps aren't just taking up storage, they're fragments of attention you'll never reclaim. Or consider your wardrobe, the just-in-case items gathering dust. The Stoics would argue they're not just clothes, they're decisions you haven't finished making. Here's where subtraction becomes liberation. Pick one drawer, one digital folder, or even one recurring obligation that no longer serves you. Letting go isn't loss, it's the relief of setting down a burden you forgot you were carrying. As Seneca wrote, "Until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are." Today, ask yourself, what's one thing I'm ready to release, not because it's wrong to have it, but because I'm right to be free? Picture this: a sudden thunderstorm cancels your outdoor wedding. Your mind screams disaster, but the Stoics would challenge that label with one piercing question. Is it truly the rain ruining things, or the story you're telling about the rain? Marcus Aurelius perfected this mental discipline with what he called stripping away the bark, peeling back emotional interpretations to reveal events in their naked truth. His journal spells it out plainly. Don't say more to yourself than the facts themselves report. You've suffered a setback, that's all. This habit trains you to separate what happens from the drama we layer onto it. Take weather complaints when someone groans, "Another miserable rainy day." They're not describing precipitation, they're projecting disappointment onto clouds. The Stoic alternative: there's precipitation today, leaves room to notice how rain makes grass greener or how cozy it feels to read indoors. Even major setbacks like job losses or breakups become easier to navigate when you practice stating them plainly. "My position was eliminated," or "this relationship ended," before adding interpretive fuel like "my life is ruined." Here's where raw observation becomes transformative power. Ancient Stoics would rehearse objective descriptions like mental athletes calling a shipwreck, wood floating on water, or death a return of atoms to the universe. Modern applications try reframing traffic as cars moving slower than expected instead of a nightmare. That slight shift creates breathing room between reality and reaction. Your challenge: pick one complaint from this week, maybe "my coworker ignored me," or "this coffee is terrible," and rewrite it as a neutral observation. "My coworker didn't reply to my greeting," or "this coffee tastes bitter to me." Feel how the emotional charge dissipates. That's the Stoic superpower of seeing clearly, not to suppress feelings, but to respond from choice rather than reflex. As Marcus reminded himself, the thing itself is nothing, your judgment about it is everything. Master this, and you'll find storms pass quicker when you stop insisting they're personal. Here's your next script segment, following your guidelines meticulously. Modern goal-setting culture shouts one message loud and clear: crush your targets no matter what. But buried beneath those motivational posters lies an uncomfortable truth: our best-laid plans often collide with forces beyond our control. The Stoics had a wiser approach, something Epictetus called the reserve clause, those two humble words that transform rigid expectations into flexible wisdom, fate permitting. Picture two entrepreneurs launching startups. The first declares, "I will hit 1 million in sales this year." The second resolves, "I'll work toward 1 million in sales if nothing prevents it." Both share the same ambition, but only one has built a mental escape hatch when markets shift or suppliers falter. Epictetus captured this perfectly. "I will sail if nothing prevents me, but I may not sail at all." That's the reserve clause in action: full commitment to effort, zero attachment to uncontrollable outcomes. This habit isn't about hedging your bets or doubting yourself, it's about honoring the difference between your role and life's role. Planning a vacation. We'll hike Machu Picchu in July if flights and weather allow. Starting a side hustle. I'll launch by autumn pending no family emergencies. Each "if" isn't an excuse, it's a reminder that effort and outcome live in separate domains. Even modern psychology backs this. Studies show people who pair goals with flexible contingencies experience less stress and higher long-term success. Try this today. Take one current goal, maybe a fitness target or career milestone, and silently add "fate permitting" to the end. Feel that subtle shift. The pressure to control lifts, leaving only the clarity to act, because presence isn't about white-knuckling your way through life. It's about dancing with its unpredictability, one grounded step at a time. As Seneca advised, the wise man considers intention rather than outcome in all things. You steer the boat, the river decides the speed. When was the last time you willingly skipped a meal, not because you were too busy, but precisely to remind yourself you could? Seneca, the wealthy Stoic statesman, routinely set aside days to wear rough clothing, eat stale bread, and sleep on hard floors. His reasoning cuts through 2,000 years of comfort. Set aside a certain number of days to be content with the plainest food and clothing, and ask yourself, is this really so terrible? That's the essence of practicing poverty, not as permanent suffering, but as periodic training to disarm life's surprises. This habit reveals a counterintuitive truth: comfort breeds fragility. Imagine two people, one who panics when their phone battery dips below 20%, another who regularly goes hours without checking screens. Which one retains composure when technology fails? The Stoics weren't advocating self-flagellation. They were building mental calluses through deliberate discomfort. Modern science confirms their insight: intermittent fasting boosts resilience, digital detoxes sharpen focus, and cold showers train stress tolerance. Voluntary lacks aren't punishments, they're rehearsals for life's inevitable deprivations. Try scaling this to your life today. Swap your morning coffee for water. Leave your wallet at home during a walk. Spend an evening with devices powered off. Notice how discomfort reveals hidden dependencies: the jittery craving for caffeine, the anxious reach for absent notifications. As Seneca observed during his hardship days, poverty measured against the greed of riches is great wealth. Each small act of refusal strengthens your ability to say, "I choose" rather than "I need." Here's where temporary poverty becomes transformative. Pick one privilege you take for granted: warm showers, streaming services, your daily commute playlist, and surrender it for 24 hours. Not to prove you can suffer, but to rediscover how much you already have. Because presence isn't just about enjoying abundance, it's about remaining unshaken when portions of it vanish. As the Stoics knew, the person who fears losing comforts is always poorer than the one who's learned to thrive without them. Here's your next segment, crafted to flow seamlessly while offering fresh insights. We've all wasted precious hours fretting over things we can't change. The rude comment from a stranger, a friend's silent treatment, even the weather-ruining weekend plans. What if I told you that every moment spent agonizing over these uncontrollables is like trying to hold water in your clenched fist? The tighter you grip, the more slips through. This is where Epictetus' brilliant distinction comes in. His concept of the circle of influence separates life into two categories: what's firmly within your power and what never was. His words cut through the noise. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Our opinions, desires, and actions, these we control. Everything else merely guest appearances in our lives. Imagine your concerns as concentric circles. At the center, your thoughts, choices, efforts. Beyond that, external opinions, outcomes, events. The Stoic secret: pour all your energy into the inner ring while meeting the outer with detached awareness. Take social media. You control posting thoughtful content, but never how many likes it gets. You can extend kindness, but can't force others to reciprocate. Modern anxiety often stems from trying to commandeer the wrong circle, fighting to control reactions instead of refining our own actions. Here's how to apply this today. Grab a sheet of paper and draw 2 circles. List 3 current worries in each: inner for what you directly influence, your preparation for a meeting; outer for what you don't, whether the client approves. Now cross out the outer circle items. Feel that lightness. That's the weight of illusions dropping away. Epictetus wasn't suggesting we ignore external events, just that we stop handing them the reins. When you catch yourself spiraling over someone's opinion, ask, is this inside my circle? If not, redirect that energy where it actually builds something: your character, your skills, your peace. Because presence isn't about controlling life's stage. It's about mastering your performance regardless of the audience's applause. Habit 18. Silent endurance. We live in an era where discomfort is treated like an emergency, where a slow Wi-Fi connection sparks outrage and a chilly office becomes grounds for complaint. But the Stoics recognized a profound truth. The ability to bear life's small hardships without protest isn't just resilience, it's a form of silent mastery. Cato the Younger, the iron-willed Stoic, was famous for walking barefoot through snow to harden his resolve. When friends urged him to wear shoes, he replied, "How else will I learn to tolerate the cold if not by feeling it?" Musonius Rufus took this further, calling endurance the truest education. How can a person become brave if they only seek comfort? How can they learn self-control if they flee from every inconvenience? This isn't about glorifying suffering. It's about rewiring our reflex to treat every minor ache as a crisis. Think of it like mental strength training. Just as muscles grow under resistance, character develops when we meet discomfort without crumbling. Here's where this ancient habit meets modern life. That dental appointment you've been avoiding, the endless line at the DMV. Each is a chance to practice silent endurance, not by gritting your teeth in misery, but by observing the experience without indulging the urge to vent. Notice how complaining magnifies discomfort, while quiet acceptance often minimizes it. Even something as simple as resisting the impulse to groan about traffic shifts your focus from frustration to presence. Try this today. The next time you feel that familiar twinge, the too hot room, the stiff chair, the delayed train, pause before vocalizing it. Ask yourself, is this truly unbearable, or have I just been conditioned to think it is? That moment of hesitation is where real strength begins, because presence isn't about eliminating life's friction. It's about moving through it without letting it wear you down. As Musonius taught, the person who masters discomfort masters themselves. And in a world addicted to complaint, that quiet strength speaks louder than words. Here's your next segment, crafted with fresh engagement and depth. When was the last time you genuinely felt like a beginner, hands fumbling, mind wide open, humbled by how much you didn't know? Socrates built his entire philosophy on a single, shocking admission: I know that I know nothing. That radical humility wasn't weakness, it was the ultimate intellectual strength. The Stoics took this further, framing every interaction as a chance to shed assumptions and relearn the world. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, offered this piercing insight. It's impossible to learn what you think you already know. This habit isn't about pretending ignorance, it's about dismantling the arrogance of expertise. Picture two people attending a workshop, one scribbling notes, certain they've mastered the topic before, the other whispering, "What if I've missed something essential?" That's the beginner's mind in action, treating familiarity as the enemy of growth. Modern research confirms this. Psychologists call it the expertise trap, where seasoned professionals plateau precisely because they stop questioning their methods. Apply this today in unexpected places. Reheat yesterday's dinner as if you've never used a microwave. Notice how the buttons feel under your fingertips. Walk through your neighborhood searching for 3 details you've never seen before. Even in conversations, trade, "Actually, here's how it is," for "help me understand." That subtle shift transforms interactions from lectures to discoveries. Here's your challenge. Pick one routine task: brushing your teeth, driving to work, even typing an email, and perform it as if you're doing it for the first time. Not to slow yourself down, but to uncover layers of autopilot you didn't realize were there, because presence thrives in curiosity, not certainty. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "Throw away your books, stop letting others tell you how to think." Learn to listen to yourself, to life, to the lessons hidden in plain sight. The wisest minds stay empty enough to be filled anew each day. There's a forgotten art to walking, not as transportation, but as transformation. While modern commuters march down sidewalks with eyes glued to screens, the founders of Stoicism saw each step as an opportunity to strengthen the mind. Zeno held philosophy classes while pacing Athens' marble colonnades, and Seneca wrote in his letters, "Solvitur ambulando," it is solved by walking. These men understood something we've unlearned. Motion unlocks clarity in ways stillness cannot. Consider the difference between how we typically walk today: head down, notifications pinging, attention fractured, versus the Stoic approach, a rhythmic meditation where feet sync with breath and thoughts flow freely. For Seneca, his daily strolls were sacred space where he'd discuss matters with myself, untangling ideas without distraction. Modern science now confirms what these philosophers practiced. Walking boosts creative thinking by 60% compared to sitting, and the bilateral stimulation of left-right steps enhances problem solving. The beauty of this habit lies in its simplicity. You don't need a forest path or hours of free time, just the willingness to reclaim stolen moments, that 10-minute walk between meetings. Instead of reflexively checking email, let it become moving contemplation. Your lunch break commute to the cafe. Leave your phone in your pocket and notice how the air feels against your skin, how shop windows reflect changing light. Even indoor pacing during a stressful phone call can become grounding when you focus on the pressure of your soles against the floor. Here's where philosophy meets pavement. Tomorrow, choose one routine walk to your car, around the block, or through your office hallway, and do it in full sensory awareness. No podcasts, no playlists, just the rhythm of movement and the space it creates in your mind. Notice how frustrations soften when your body is in motion but your attention isn't fractured. As Seneca observed after his walks, the mind gathers itself into itself, a priceless gift in our age of endless diversion. Because presence isn't always about standing still. Sometimes it's found in the deliberate act of putting one foot in front of the other, undistracted and fully alive. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet lake, tossing in a single pebble. That first small splash seems insignificant until you notice the ripples expanding further than you ever expected. This is how Stoic habits work their quiet magic on your presence, not through dramatic overhauls, but through 20 subtle pebbles of practice. each one sending out waves that gradually reshape how you move through the world. From the morning pause that grounds your intentions to the nightly reflection that sharpens your awareness, these disciplines aren't isolated tools. They're interlocking strands in an unshakable lifeline. Epictetus, who knew firsthand how daily drops accumulate into oceans of strength, offered this timeless wisdom. Character isn't formed in grand declarations, it's carved through the drip of consistent choice. That's the heart of what we've explored here, not a single habit alone, but the alchemy that happens when practiced together. The pause before reacting gives space for journaled reflections to surface. The voluntary discomforts make unexpected hardships easier to bear. The stripped-down language clears mental clutter for deeper focus. Each habit is a thread, and together they weave an invisible armor, one that doesn't weigh you down but lifts you into fuller alignment with your principles. Here's where philosophy meets pavement. You don't need to master all 20 practices today. In fact, trying to would miss the point entirely. Start with one. Maybe it's the 3-second pause before responding to a provocation tonight, or the 5 minutes of morning stillness before reaching for your phone tomorrow. Progress hides in the ordinary moments, the decision to walk without distraction, to reframe a complaint into plain observation, to choose purposeful words over mindless chatter. Before you close this video, take a breath. Ask yourself, which habit whispered to me the loudest? Was it the mental resilience of premeditating challenges, or perhaps the quiet power of silent endurance? Drop your answer below, not just to share, but to solidify your commitment, because transformation doesn't ask for your whole life at once, just the next small, deliberate step. As the Stoics showed us 2,000 years ago, the mightiest oaks grow from the tiniest acorns tended daily. Your presence, rooted, unshakable, alive, is waiting in those patient, persistent drops.